This is one example of how to experiment with rainbow paper. My question is, what will happen if I change the temperature of the water? My hypothesis is that I think the colors will swirl more in hot water than in cold water. First, I tried using hot water, which was about 160 degrees. When I added a drop of nail polish, I noticed that it spread out, but it kind of stayed in a circle shape. Even when I picked it up on the paper, the shape stayed quite round. Notice the circle shape again, and that once the polish spread out a little bit, it just stopped and wouldn't spread out farther. And then when I lift the paper out, you can see that circle remains, especially right in the middle. So my observations for the hot water was that there was a prominent circle in the middle of the design. There were narrow rainbow stripes along the edges, and the colors just did not really spread very far. When the paper dried, I noticed that the polish in the center of the circle was more shiny than the rest of the page, so I rubbed it with my finger and the polish rubbed right off. It was not stuck to the page at all. Next, I tried warm water, which was about 83 degrees. This time, the nail polish seemed to spread out much faster than the last time. I also noticed that I could see stripes of color throughout the nail polish, and when I lifted out the paper, those stripes were captured there. So my observations were that I could see stripes of color, and I did not see that solid circle in the middle of the color. I also noticed that the stripes mostly seem to follow rainbow color order. So I can see pink and orange, yellow, green, teal, blue, purple, and then it would go back to pink again. Finally, I noticed that when the stripes were not quite as wide, I could not see all of those colors. And when the paper dried, I couldn't rub away the color. It seemed to really stick to the paper. Finally, I used cold water, which was about 52 degrees. When I added the drop of polish, I noticed that it spread really quickly, and it looked like it just kept moving the whole time. Then when I pulled the paper out, I noticed that the colors were spread out really well. Here's another example. Look at how the colors have spread so far that the stripes almost don't look like stripes anymore in the center. One more thing that I saw was that as I would remove the paper, the nail polish would continue to flow out across the water so that I would have a lot to clean up at the end. With the cold water paper, I noticed that the stripes were less apparent and the colors looked much more fuzzy. But I did see that there were often very narrow stripes right along the edges of the color. Finally, I noticed that the colors of the cold water paper seemed to be the most vibrant of all of the temperatures, and when the paper was dry, the color would not rub off. I originally thought that the colors would swirl more in hot water than in cold water. But what I found is that the temperature did not make the colors swirl more or less. The nail polish spread out more in cold water and less in hot water. And when the nail polish spread out more, the stripes grew wider and less distinct. My next step is to iterate. I think about what questions I have now and what I should experiment with next.